Pain is not your enemy. It is your most honest visitor. It comes unannounced, sits silently inside you, and waits not to destroy you, but to be heard. You have been taught to escape it, to suppress it, to decorate your wounds with smiles, yet pain does not dissolve in silence. It deepens. When you speak to your pain, something sacred begins. Awareness replaces resistance, and understanding takes the place of fear. This is not a speech about suffering as punishment. This is an invitation to meet your pain with consciousness, to listen without judgment, and to discover that within the darkest ache lies the doorway to your awakening. Pain is a messenger, not an enemy. Yet you have been trained to treat every messenger as a threat. The moment pain appears, you close your doors, your windows, your heart. You call it bad, negative, unwanted, as if existence has made a mistake by sending it to you. But existence never makes mistakes. It only sends invitations. Pain is one such invitation, perhaps the most misunderstood one. It is not here to punish you. It is here to wake you. Pain is the language of the soul when the mind has been too noisy to listen. It arises when something essential has been ignored for too long, when your truth has been silent, when your natural flow has been blocked by fear, conditioning, and borrowed beliefs. Pain is simply saying that life within you wants to move again. You ask why pain exists, but a better question would be why awareness is absent. In awareness, pain loses its poison. In unconsciousness, even pleasure becomes suffering. Pain itself is neutral energy. It becomes suffering only when you resist it. Resistance is the real enemy, not pain. When you fight pain, you divide yourself, and division creates tension. That tension deepens the wound. Pain then becomes layered, heavy, chronic. But if you allow it, if you meet it without judgment, pain begins to reveal its intelligence. It is not blind. It knows exactly where you have gone astray from yourself. Pain carries information. It knows where you compromised, where you betrayed your own inner voice to be accepted, where you swallowed your tears to look strong, where you killed your laughter to appear mature. Pain remembers everything. It is your inner historian, faithfully recording every moment you abandoned yourself. And now it wants to speak. But you have never been taught how to listen. You were taught how to escape. Escape into work, into relationships, into religion, into entertainment, into substances, into endless thinking. All escapes have one thing in common. They avoid silence. And pain can only be heard in silence. The moment you sit silently with your pain, without trying to change it, something unexpected happens. Pain starts melting, not because you did something to it, but because you stopped doing something against it. Pain thrives on conflict. It dies in acceptance. Acceptance is not resignation. It is deep understanding. Acceptance says yes to what is, and in that yes, transformation begins. Pain does not want to stay forever. It wants to complete its message and move on. But if you never receive the message, it keeps knocking, louder each time. You have been told to be brave, to endure, to tolerate. Endurance is not healing. Tolerance is not transformation. These are subtle ways of suppressing. Suppression pushes pain deeper, into the body, into the unconscious, where it becomes illness, anxiety, depression. Speaking to pain means bringing it back into the light of consciousness. It means sitting with it as a friend, not as a judge. It means asking, not intellectually, but existentially, what it needs, what it wants to show, what it has been protecting all along. Yes, protecting. Pain protects you from becoming completely false. It is the alarm that rings when you are living against your own nature. If you listen early, it whispers. If you ignore it, it screams. If you still ignore it, it breaks you open. Even then, it is compassion, though it may not look like it. Pain is ruthless only when you are asleep. When you are awake, it is gentle, almost tender. It does not come to destroy you. It comes to remove what is destroying you from within. When you label pain as an enemy, you miss its gift. When you condemn it, you strengthen it. When you escape from it, you carry it with you everywhere. But when you face it naked and unarmed, it loses its power over you. Facing pain does not mean dramatizing it. Drama feeds the ego. Pain is very simple, very raw. It asks only one thing: your presence. Not solutions, not theories, not spiritual slogans. Just presence. And presence is the greatest healer there is. Pain is the doorway through which authenticity enters. People who have never spoken to their pain life borrowed lives. They smile borrowed smiles, speak borrowed truths, love borrowed loves. They are strangers to themselves. Pain is the rebel that refuses to live a borrowed life. It says no to falsehood. It says no to masks. It says no to compromise. That is why it is uncomfortable. Truth is always uncomfortable to the untrue. But if you dare to stay with it, pain turns into clarity. And clarity is freedom. Do not try to get rid of pain. That desire itself is violent. Violence cannot heal. Violence can only postpone. Instead, allow pain to be. Sit with it as you would sit with a wild animal, without sudden movements, without fear, without domination. Slowly, it will trust you. Slowly, it will reveal its secrets. And those secrets are not dark, they are luminous. They are about your potential, your sensitivity, your depth. Only a sensitive being feels pain deeply. Stones do not suffer. Machines do not suffer. Pain is the proof that you are alive, vulnerable, capable of love. When you begin to see pain as a messenger, gratitude arises. Strange as it may sound, gratitude for pain. Because without it, you would remain asleep. Without it, you would go on repeating the same patterns, the same mistakes, the same lies. Pain interrupts. It says stop. It says look. It says listen. And if you listen totally without holding back, pain completes its work and dissolves into awareness, leaving behind wisdom, softness, and a silent strength that does not need to prove anything to anyone. Is silent is one of the most misunderstood words in the human language. You think silence means closing your mouth, holding your breath, tightening yourself from within, pretending nothing is happening. That is not silence, that is suppression. Suppression is violent, silence is compassionate. Suppression pushes pain into the basement of your being, where it rots, multiplies, and waits for the right moment to erupt. Silence invites pain into the living room, allows it to sit with you, allows it to breathe. Suppression is fear wearing the mask of control. Silence is courage resting in awareness. When you suppress, you are saying no to life. When you are silent, you are saying yes without conditions. You have been trained to suppress from the very beginning. A child cries and is told to be quiet. A child feels anger and is told to behave. A child feels fear and is told to be strong. Slowly, the child learns that certain feelings are unacceptable, unsafe, unloved. The child learns to push them down deeper and deeper until even the child forgets they exist. But existence does not forget. The body does not forget. The unconscious does not forget. What you suppress becomes pain, not because pain is bad, but because life energy has been blocked. Suppression is a dam. Silence is a river flowing freely. True silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of resistance. In silence, everything is allowed to be as it is. Tears can come, trembling can come, heaviness can come, confusion can come. Silence does not interfere. Suppression interferes constantly. It watches, judges, controls. Suppression says, this should not be happening. Silence says, this is happening, let us see it fully. Suppression is exhausting because it needs continuous effort. Silence is restful because it needs no effort at all. It is your natural state before you were taught to fight yourself. When pain arises, You usually do one of two things. Either you express it unconsciously, throwing it onto others through anger, blame, drama, or you suppress it silently, turning it inward as guilt, shame, sadness. Both are unconscious. Speaking to pain requires a third way, silent witnessing. Witnessing is not suppression. Witnessing is not expression. Witnessing is awareness without choice. You are present, alert, open, without trying to change anything. In that presence, pain does not feel threatened, so it does not harden. It begins to relax, like a clenched fist slowly opening. Suppression creates layers. One pain is never alone. Suppress it today, and tomorrow another pain will sit on top of it. Years pass, and you no longer know what you are carrying. Only that you feel heavy, tired, irritated without reason. Silence peels these layers gently. It does not attack. It does not rush. It allows each layer to reveal itself when you are ready. Silence has patience. Suppression has urgency. Suppression wants to get rid of pain quickly because it is uncomfortable. Silence is willing to stay with discomfort because it trusts transformation. People are afraid of silence because they confuse it with emptiness. They think if they become silent, they will disappear, collapse, fall apart. In truth, what collapses in silence is only the false. Masks fall, pretenses fall, borrowed identities fall. What remains is real. Pain is often the guardian of this real self. It stands at the gate, frightening those who live superficially. Silence is the key that opens the gate. Suppression keeps the gate locked, but the knocking never stops. To be silent with pain means not naming it too quickly. The mind is eager to label sadness, anxiety, trauma, depression. Labels give a false sense of control. Silence goes deeper than names. It feels directly. It allows sensation without story. The story is the mind's invention. The sensation is the body's truth. Suppression lives in stories. Silence lives in sensation. When you stay with sensation, without escaping into explanation, pain loses its psychological weight and becomes pure energy moving through you. Suppression always has a goal, to get rid of pain. Silence has no goal. It is not greedy for results. It is not in a hurry to heal. And because of this non-greed, healing happens. Healing cannot be forced. It is not a technique. It is a byproduct of understanding. Silence understands without words. Suppression misunderstands with too many words. Silence listens. Suppression argues. Silence allows pain to speak in its own language, through the body, through breath, through sensation. When you are truly silent, you will notice that pain changes. Sometimes it intensifies, sometimes it softens, sometimes it moves, sometimes it dissolves. Suppression freezes pain. Silence allows movement. Movement is life. Frozen energy is suffering. Flowing energy is intelligence. Silence restores flow. And in that flow, pain reveals its deeper meaning, not as an idea, but as an experience of becoming whole again. Awareness is the most subtle and the most powerful medicine available to you. It does not come in bottles, it does not follow methods, it does not belong to any system. It is your very nature forgotten. Pain exists only because awareness has been missing from certain parts of your being. Wherever light has not reached, darkness accumulates. Pain is not something separate from you. It is a part of you living in darkness. The moment awareness arrives, pain does not need to be fought, corrected, or fixed. It simply begins to transform. The way night transforms into morning without any struggle. You try to heal pain by doing something, but awareness is not doing. It is being. This is difficult for the mind to understand because the mind is trained in effort, in achievement, in control. The mind asks, what should I do about my pain? Awareness answers, be with it. Doing creates distance. Being dissolves distance. When you do something about pain, you stand apart from it as if it is an object, an enemy, a problem. When you are with pain in awareness, there is no separation. You and the pain exist in the same field of consciousness. In that shared space, pain loses its sharpness. Awareness is non-judgmental. Judgment is the fuel of suffering. The moment you call pain bad, wrong, negative, unnecessary, you have already added a second pain on top of the first. The first pain is natural, the second is psychological. Awareness sees without labeling. It does not say this should not be here. It simply says this is here. This simple recognition relaxes the nervous system. The body feels safe enough to release what it has been holding. Pain tightens when it feels unsafe. Awareness creates safety. When you watch pain closely, without the intention to change it, you begin to notice its impermanence. It moves, it pulses. It changes shape, intensity, location. This observation is revolutionary. Suffering survives on the belief that pain is permanent, solid, fixed. Awareness reveals that pain is a process, not a thing. And whatever is a process can change. But change does not come from manipulation. It comes from seeing clearly. Seeing clearly is awareness. Awareness brings compassion, not as an idea, but as a natural response. When you see your pain without judgment, kindness arises effortlessly. You stop being harsh with yourself. You stop demanding strength when tenderness is needed. You stop forcing positivity when honesty is required. Awareness understands timing. It knows when to be firm and when to be gentle. Pain softens in the presence of this intelligence because pain itself is tired of being misunderstood. You have been taught to identify with pain, my trauma, my suffering. Awareness loosens this identification. You begin to see that pain is happening in you, but it is not who you are. This does not create indifference. It creates freedom. Identification traps you inside pain. Awareness gives you space. In that space, you can breathe again. You can feel without drowning. You can face without collapsing. Awareness is the bridge between feeling and freedom. The body responds immediately to awareness. Muscles relax, breath deepens, energy starts moving. Many pains are nothing but frozen energy. Awareness melts this ice. You may feel heat, trembling, tears, waves of sensation. These are signs that life is returning to areas that were shut down. Awareness does not panic when these movements happen. It allows them. Suppression stops them. Expression exaggerates them. Awareness balances them. Awareness is not cold observation. It is warm presence. It includes the heart. It includes love. When awareness touches pain, it does so gently, like a hand placed on a wound without pressing. Pain responds to this gentleness. It begins to trust. Trust is essential for healing. Without trust, pain stays guarded. Awareness builds trust because it does not have an agenda. It does not want pain to disappear. It wants to understand it. And understanding is the deepest form of love. As awareness deepens, pain starts revealing its roots. You see patterns, memories, beliefs, not as stories, but as living impressions. You see how pain was created, how it was carried, how it was protected. This seeing is not analytical, it is intuitive. Insight arises spontaneously. And with insight, release happens naturally. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, silently, like a river carving its path through rock. Awareness does not promise a pain-free life. That promise belongs to illusion. Awareness offers something far more valuable. Freedom within pain. Clarity within confusion, peace within chaos. Pain may still visit, but it no longer dominates. It becomes a signal, not a sentence. It becomes a guide, not a jailer. Awareness turns pain into a teacher. And when the lesson is learned, the teacher quietly disappears. The ego's fear of feeling is one of the most subtle yet pervasive forces in human life. The ego, that constructed self-image, is built upon control, appearances, and separation. Its entire existence depends on creating a consistent narrative, a story about who you are, what is acceptable, and what should never be acknowledged. Pain threatens the ego because pain reveals truth. It exposes the fragility, the vulnerabilities, and the hidden cracks that the ego has spent a lifetime carefully concealing. When you feel deeply, when you acknowledge your hurt, sadness, anger, or fear, the ego trembles. It does not want you to feel because feeling dissolves the stories it relies upon. The ego wants you numb, distracted, and performing according to expectation. It fears feeling because feeling is authenticity. And authenticity is dangerous to any artificial self. From childhood, you have been trained to deny, suppress, or mask your feelings. Crying was labeled as weakness, anger as wrong, fear as failure, vulnerability as shameful. Slowly, the ego took charge, deciding which emotions were acceptable and which were forbidden. Every forbidden emotion became a wound. Every suppressed tear, a silent memory. Every fear ignored became a seed of anxiety. Pain accumulated quietly in the hidden corners of your being, waiting for acknowledgement. And the ego, ever vigilant, worked tirelessly to keep these corners hidden, telling you lies like, nothing is wrong, you are fine, just be strong. These lies create a tension so subtle that you may not even notice it until a sudden crisis explodes, showing the depth of what has been denied. Ego fears feeling because feelings are unpredictable. Pain, sadness, longing, grief, these cannot be measured, controlled, or analyzed. The ego thrives on predictability, repetition, and control, while authentic feelings flow like rivers, uncontainable, unpredictable, unstoppable. To feel fully is to lose the control the ego clings to. And control is the essence of ego survival. Therefore, the ego does everything to distract you from your pain, entertainment, busyness, worry, mental analysis, endless thinking, social approval, validation, addiction. The ego keeps you occupied so that the deeper layers of your inner self, the layers that feel, that suffer, that long for freedom, remain unexplored. The more you run, the more entrenched the ego becomes, and the more your pain festers in hidden corners, multiplying like a shadow that cannot see the light. When pain arises, the ego immediately begins a conversation with itself, labeling, judging, and resisting. This should not be happening, the ego says. I cannot allow this. It protests. This makes me weak, it whispers. The ego creates a secondary suffering on top of the natural pain. Natural pain is energy, a signal, a messenger. Ego-generated pain is layered, compounded, and heavy. And most people do not recognize the second as ego interference. They only feel the weight, the tension, the misery, and they think they are failing. In truth, the failure is never in the feeling, it is in the identification with the ego, which cannot bear to witness truth. The ego fears feelings because feelings are gateways to awareness. Pain carries wisdom if you are willing to feel it fully. Grief teaches acceptance. Anger teaches boundaries. Fear teaches sensitivity. Longing teaches presence. But awareness bypasses the ego. It cannot be controlled or manipulated. The ego cannot take credit for it. It fears this because it loses its power when awareness grows. The ego's fear is protective only in the sense that it believes shielding you from your own emotions keeps you safe. In reality, shielding is imprisonment. The ego tells you, stay small, stay in control, stay safe, but safety without feeling is death of the soul. To awaken, to live authentically, you must risk ego's discomfort. You must allow feelings to flow. Feeling requires courage because the ego has made you identify so strongly with thought, image, and opinion that anything outside of it appears dangerous. You have been trained to define yourself through accomplishments, status, relationships, and beliefs. All of these are outer structures. Pain, feelings, inner emptiness, they dismantle these outer structures, exposing what is underneath, raw being, vulnerable, alive. Ego resists this exposure. It invents stories to protect itself. I am strong, I am fine, I am in control. But beneath the stories, the body feels the tension, the breath constricted, the heart guarded, the soul waiting. Pain is the doorway to that truth. But the ego stands in front of the doorway, shaking with fear. The ego fears feeling because it knows that through feeling, you will remember wholeness. When you face pain and allow yourself to experience it fully, you discover that you are not merely your thoughts, your opinions, your successes, or your failure. You are far more expansive than the ego allows you to believe. Pain becomes the mirror, revealing what has been hidden, your sensitivity, your depth, your capacity to love, your aliveness. The ego sees this expansion as threatening because it will no longer control the narrative. It will no longer dominate the inner world. And yet, when you confront the ego with awareness and courage, it does not resist forever. It begins to soften, recognizing that true safety exists in surrendering, in allowing life to flow, in feeling fully without retreating into false identities. Ego's fear of feeling is universal, but it is also an opportunity. Whenever you feel a surge of resistance, denial, or judgment toward your own pain, that resistance itself is the ego speaking. It is a signal that you are on the threshold of authenticity. To move beyond the ego's fear, you do not fight it. Fighting strengthens it. You simply notice, this is the ego speaking. It is afraid of feeling. It wants control. It wants comfort. But I am willing to feel anyway. This simple acknowledgement is revolutionary. Awareness of ego's fear disarms it. Pain can flow. Life can flow. Consciousness can expand. You no longer need to obey the ego. You no longer need to silence yourself. You begin to live from a deeper place where pain is not an enemy, where feelings are welcomed, and where your true self, the self beyond ego, is allowed to emerge fully, naturally, and freely. Compassion toward the inner wound is perhaps the most transformative force available to human beings. Yet it is the one most often neglected. From the earliest moments of life, you were conditioned to look outward for validation, for comfort, for love. You were told to be strong, to perform, to endure, to compete, to hide vulnerability. And so, the inner wound, the place where you were hurt, neglected, rejected, or misunderstood, was left alone, left unattended. It grew in silence, collecting layers of grief, shame, and fear. When you finally encounter that wound as an adult, it may appear threatening, overwhelming, or even unbearable. But the truth is, the wound carries the key to your deepest healing. It asks for nothing but your presence, your acknowledgement, and your compassion. Without compassion, the wound festers. With compassion, it transforms into wisdom. Compassion begins with understanding. You must first see your own pain without judgment, without blame, without denial. Most people are quick to judge themselves harshly. I shouldn't feel this way. I am weak. I am too sensitive. I am broken. These judgments are echoes of external voices absorbed over a lifetime. Internalized standards imposed by family, society, and culture. Compassion does not judge. It does not demand perfection. It does not compare. It simply recognizes this is suffering. This is real. This is part of life, part of me, and I am willing to be present with it. That recognition alone begins to loosen the grip of the wound, because the wound's deepest fear is invisibility. When you witness it, it knows it exists, and that acknowledgement is profoundly healing. Compassion requires patience. Healing is not instantaneous. The wound has been accumulating for years, perhaps decades. You cannot rush it, cannot demand that it disappear on your timetable, cannot fix it with intellectual reasoning, nor can you ignore it and hope it resolves on its own. To be compassionate is to stay with the wound through its cycles of pain, anger, sadness, despair, and confusion. Some days the wound will feel heavier, other days it may soften. There will be moments when it seems unmovable, invincible, impenetrable. Yet compassion allows you to remain, to breathe alongside it, to offer your steady presence. Presence itself is a form of healing energy, far more powerful than analysis, distraction, or avoidance. To cultivate compassion toward your inner wound, you must also relinquish the need for control. The wound resists manipulation. It cannot be coerced, argued with, or silenced. Attempts to control it often create further suffering. Instead, compassion is surrender. It is saying, I am here. I will not turn away. I do not need to change you. I do not need you to be perfect. I do not need to understand you completely. I will simply be here. This surrender is not passive. It is an active choice to allow life to unfold naturally within you. The wound senses this surrender and gradually softens. It begins to release the tension, the stored pain, and the fear that it has been holding for so long. The energy that once seemed destructive or oppressive transforms into insight, sensitivity, and subtle strength. Compassion also involves tenderness toward yourself. The mind may tell you to be strong, to endure, to suppress emotions, to avoid vulnerability. But tenderness is a direct confrontation with the ego's conditioning. Tenderness is not weakness, it is profound courage. When you allow yourself to feel, to cry, to tremble, to experience the full depth of the wound without retreating into armor, you honor your humanity. You honor the life force that has survived despite rejection, neglect, and hardship. Tenderness allows the wound to be experienced fully yet safely. It provides a container in which pain can express itself, not destructively, but naturally as energy that moves, transforms, and ultimately integrates. Compassion transforms the very nature of pain. What was once sharp, heavy, and isolating becomes gentle, expansive, and illuminating. You begin to see that pain is not a punishment, nor a flaw, nor a sign of weakness. Pain is a doorway. Each wound carries a message, a hidden teaching, a truth about your capacity to love, to feel, to grow, and to awaken. Compassion allows you to enter this doorway without fear. It allows you to see your suffering as a mirror of life itself, a mirror reflecting impermanence, interconnectedness, and the profound beauty of existence. With compassion, the wound is no longer a prison. It becomes a teacher, a guide, and a companion on the journey toward wholeness. When compassion is fully present, the inner wound loses its hold over you. It no longer demands constant attention. It no longer dictates reaction. And it no longer generates unconscious patterns of self-sabotage. Instead, it becomes a quiet reservoir of understanding and sensitivity. You carry the wound, but it carries you as well. You learn to listen to your own needs, to honor your boundaries, to respect your emotions, and to engage with life from a place of presence rather than fear. Compassion turns the wound into a source of wisdom. You learn to navigate life with authenticity, courage, and depth, and in doing so, you radiate this same compassion outward, touching others without effort, without expectation, because you have first touched the deepest part of yourself. Compassion toward the inner wound is ultimately an act of love, a love that does not demand return, a love that does not seek recognition, a love that simply is. It is not sentimental, it is radical. It is not theoretical, it is practical. It is the ground upon which awakening occurs. The more deeply you cultivate compassion for your own suffering, the more you awaken to the truth that life is neither to be controlled nor to be avoided, but to be embraced fully, with all its joy, sorrow, confusion, and clarity. In that embrace, pain ceases to be an enemy. Instead, becomes a sacred companion on the journey of consciousness and self-realization. Transformation through witnessing is the ultimate doorway to liberation. Yet, it is a practice so simple and profound that most people overlook it. Witnessing is the art of being fully present to whatever arises within you. Pain, joy, anger, fear, longing without interference, judgment, or suppression. Most of human suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our reaction to what happens, our identification with it, our story making around it. When you witness, you create a space between yourself and the events of your inner world. In that space, clarity arises, and with clarity comes freedom. Witnessing is not passive observation, nor is it detachment. It is a conscious, alert presence that allows life to move through you without being trapped by it. From early life, you were trained to react, cry, and someone soothes you or reprimands you. Anger, and someone teaches you to control it. Fear, and someone tells you to be brave. All these responses encouraged identification with the reactive self, with the conditioned patterns of thought and emotion. Witnessing asks you to step back from these patterns, not to deny them, not to suppress them, but to see them as they are, temporary, moving, impersonal phenomena. When you witness your own pain, you stop feeding it with resistance, fear, or judgment. Resistance adds weight, fear adds tension, judgment adds distortion. Witnessing creates a field of consciousness in which pain can transform naturally, like ice melting in sunlight. Witnessing requires honesty. To witness, you must see your pain exactly as it is, without adornment or interpretation. You cannot lie to yourself. You cannot soften, dramatize, or intellectualize. You simply feel it, observe it, and allow it to be. This raw, unfiltered presence is revolutionary because it bypasses the ego's habitual narratives. The ego wants explanation, control, and story. The ego wants to label, judge, and compare. Witnessing ignores the ego's demands. It says, I do not need to explain. I do not need to manipulate. I simply see. In that seeing, the ego begins to relax because it realizes that true control is not possible, and true freedom comes not from domination but from acceptance. Witnessing transforms suffering into insight. When you watch your pain without interference, patterns begin to emerge. You notice the triggers, the responses, the habitual reactions, the repetitive loops that have governed your life. This is not analysis in the intellectual sense. It is intuitive understanding. The body itself begins to reveal wisdom. A tightness in the chest, a heaviness in the stomach, a clenching in the jaw. These are not problems to be fixed, but messages to be witnessed. Witnessing turns the body into a teacher and the wound into a map, guiding you towards self-knowledge and ultimately liberation. Through witnessing, pain loses its tyrannical power. When you are identified with pain, it feels endless, overwhelming, and defining. It colors every thought, every action, every relationship. Witnessing allows you to step out of that identification. Pain becomes an event, not a sentence. It flows through you, moves, and eventually dissolves. You may still feel it, but it no longer dictates who you are or how you behave. This is the essence of transformation, not escaping pain, not erasing it, but seeing it fully and allowing it to change in its own natural way. Witnessing is the container in which transformation occurs quietly, invisibly, but irrevocably. Witnessing also cultivates compassion, both for yourself and for others. When you witness your own pain, fully present and non-judgmental, you naturally understand the pain of others. You recognize that suffering is not personal, not a punishment, not a defect, but part of the human condition. This recognition dissolves judgment, resentment, and fear. Compassion arises spontaneously, not as a moral effort, but as a natural byproduct of presence. You realize that just as your pain deserves attention, patience, and care, so does the pain of everyone around you. Witnessing thus creates an expansive consciousness that transcends the limitations of ego, fear, and separation. Finally, transformation through witnessing is the path to freedom. Freedom is not the absence of pain, nor is it the absence of life's challenges. Freedom is the ability to experience life fully, without being enslaved by your reactions, attachments, or fears. Witnessing provides that freedom. It allows you to inhabit the present moment with clarity, depth, and authenticity. Pain remains a part of life, but it no longer dominates, defines, or confines you. It becomes a teacher, a guide, a companion. Through witnessing, every experience, every joy, every sorrow, every subtle emotion becomes a doorway to awakening. And in this awakening, you discover that nothing is truly lost, nothing is separate, nothing is to be feared. Transformation is not something outside of you. It has always been waiting inside. And witnessing is the key that unlocks it.